Hey everyone, welcome back to JP's Budget Collecting and our weekly look back at the hot comics from 6 months ago. This week we're looking back at the hot comics from March 31st, 2023, and I'm recording this on September 28th, 2023. As always, I give you those dates so you know when this information is actually relevant, because the market is always moving and changing, as we will see as we look at these values. And so, just so you know where these numbers are and when they were relevant to what was going on. As always, we're looking back at the CBSI Hot Top 10 and the Comic Tom Key Collector Hottest Trending Comics of the Week. So those are the lists that we've been looking back at for now for over 4 years. So those are the ones that we follow. And really, this is just about like seeing what factors made these books hot back then. How much did they jump? How much have they fallen or stayed, or what have they done in the market since, so we can all make better decisions in the moment about which books we chase, which books we're patient on, so that we're making smart decisions. So, let's dig into this list. We got 18 books to talk about between the two lists this week, and see what we can learn. First up, we have Paradise Court #1, this Zenescope horror book, so a Zenescope book actually got optioned back then, so caused it to jump up to a $15 to $30 book, and predicted a trap here. Well, you know, what's going to go on with that? Well, there's only been 2 recent sales, one for $30 and one for $60, so you could argue this is up. Listings don't go quite that high, but yeah, just the 2 sales. This book, so when it does sell, it's going for big money, but so we got to call it up. We got to call it at least worth it. But 2 sales keep me from saying straight cash on this one, because based on the listings and stuff, it's not selling enough at those higher values to make it a straight cash book. But definitely, to this point, you'd have to argue definitely up. So, which is pretty rare for a book that's just option. Maybe there's been recent news, but there hasn't been like a lot of sales. So I think it's just, yeah, when it has, people have continued to ask high prices, and it's caused it to sell just a couple times at those higher prices. Next, we have Dragonlance #1 from 1988. And this hit the list because of the success of the D&D movie, and Joe Magnolioli, I can't say his name anyway, was rumored that he was trying to get Dragonlance to the screen, so there was a lot of people thinking this might happen. So raw copies were going for $15, 9.8 went for $2.50. Now it's a $5 to $15 book. No recent 9.8 sales. So it's a down, and I'll be back, which should be expected here. Maybe we'll get a Dragonlance movie. I would guess we'll get a D&D sequel before we get that, but we will see what happens there. And now that the writer's strike's over, maybe we might get something. So we'll see. Next, we have X-Files #1. This hit the list because there were rumors of a reboot of the X-Files show, which seemed somewhat unlikely. But anyway, this all came about. Key Collector was the one saying they had the rumor, so they put it on the list, even though it was still only going for $5 back then. But there was a 400% increase in sales. This is one of those, I was like, whatever, it's going for $5, whatever. That's about as cheap as you can really buy something when you factor in shipping and stuff on eBay anyway. Now it's a $5 to $10 book, so you could call it steady worth it, but it was going for so cheap, that's not really a surprise. All right, next we have John Wick #1 from 2017. This was the first appearance of John Wick in a comic book, and this had to do with John Wick 4 hitting the theaters back then, which seems like it's been longer than 6 months since that movie came out, but has not. Back then, raw copies were going for $45, 9.8 going for $285. Now it's a $30 to $60 book, so that 45 average is right in the middle. 9.8, $225. Just one sale, down a little bit. So we're going to call this steady. I'll be back. There are more sales probably below the $45 mark than above it. The 9.8s are backed up a little bit, so we're going to stick in steady. We're going to say I'll be back. But yeah, this one's been pretty much right in the same range, and which is weird. This is a book I would have thought would have fallen back. It did not. Yeah. All right, next we have No One #1. So this was a new indie book that was coming out, and it hit the list because there was a little bit of hype around it, because it was not necessarily going to be continued as a comic, but was being continued as part of a podcast. So a new, different kind of way to promote their podcast, that kind of stuff. Raw copies back then were going for $15 to $20. Now it's a $4 to $15 book. could argue, I said trap, and based on the values, you could probably argue that, but I think there's enough going $10, $15 range that you just say, and I'll be back on this one, but definitely down. I don't know if this podcast took off, what kind of listeners it gets, but yeah, this one, with no additional comic books coming, I suspected this would drop back to being basically, very cheap, and then that's what happened. That is what happened. All right, next we're going to move out of podcasts and movies and options and that kind of stuff. We're moving to covers. First up on our covers, we have Action Comics number 1053. We have the Will Jack store variant. I forget which store this is actually from, but this one was limited to 1,000. There was also another one where it was more of a close-up. Back then, this one was going for $125 plus on the secondary market. Now it's a $60 to $100 book. 9.8 going for $90 to $200. So this has definitely turned into a trap. Backed up significantly. There's been a bunch of Power Girl covers this year that have caused some buzz, but there's been enough of them that I feel like they've kind of cropped the audience from each other, because there's probably 6 or 7, maybe 8 different Power Girl covers at this point that have been kind of hot at one point in 2023. And yeah, I feel like it's kind of they've killed the momentum from each other, and that's definitely, I don't know if that's what happened here, but this one is definitely backed up, for sure. Next, we have Tim Drake Robin, number 7. So we got a thirst trap cover for the ladies and not for the men for once. Back then, the Serge Acuna 1 in 25 was going for 50 plus. So 1 in 25 going for 50 plus, that doesn't usually mean that it's going to be a big money book. Now, only one recent sale for $259. Only one listed, also listed for $250. This is up in straight cash. Appears to have become a bit of a ghost. Not like I said, only one listed, only one recent sale. Apparently, people snatch these up and are holding them, and it's caused the value on this book to skyrocket. So yeah, this is a big up book. Definitely bucking the trend. I don't remember if this book hit the list multiple weeks. Must have, because I don't remember. Because, yeah, it must have hit the list again, because going from 50 to 250 is a huge jump. Next, we have Harley Quinn, number 28. The Dan Morrow 1 in 25. This one was going for 35, 45 back then, which is not a good sign on 125, and that's really what's followed through here. 15 to 30 on recent sales. 9.8, 60 to 110. So this one's definitely down and turned into a trap. I really like this cover. I might have to, now that it's a $15, $20 book, might be one that I have to go get. We'll see. Next, we have Star Wars Return of the Jedi, Jabba's Palace, number 1, the Maleev 1 in 25 variant. Back then it was going for 25.40, so only ratio a little more. And now it's an $18 to $35 book. So just a down and I'll be back. It's kind of shifted down a little bit. This one, there is a virgin version of this that came out on the second print. I think also hurt the momentum on this one a little bit. So this one, yeah, but also just the values it was going for back then weren't a good sign, and it did not, yeah, it definitely backed up a little bit. All right, that's the last of our covers this week. Next, we have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, The Last Ronin, number 1. So we got a little video game buzz here. This is hitting the list again because the announcement of that they were doing a video game based on this storyline. Back then, raw copies were going for 60, 9.8, 190, which weren't really that much different than where the book had been long term. There was more a spike in sales than a spike in price. And yeah, now it's still a $30 to $90 book. So 60 sitting right in the middle there on the average. 9.8, 175 to 225. So that 190s was right in the middle of that. So we're going to call it steady and worth it. This book has been pretty steady and worth it now for quite some time. These seem to be kind of the values. This book is just, this is the range this book is setting in, and it's, yeah, continuing to stay there. I think there's continuing to do some stuff in this last Ronin version of the Turtles universe. I think it's kind of an alternate future. It seems to be continue to be very popular. All right, next, we're going to come back to Power Girl. We got All-Star Comics number 58, the first appearance of Power Girl. So this was, she was coming back to comics. She'd been gone for a while. There's been a big push to bring her character in the Superman verse. She's got her own series coming now. So that was a lot of what was, you know, we knew was coming back then, caused a jump in this book. 9.0 hit 500. 9.4 hit 600 of this book. Now couldn't find sales to match on a 9.0 or a 9.4, but 9.2s are going for $3 to $350, so that's down. 9.6s are only going $650 to $675, so we've definitely backed up at least. Raw copies $30 to $200 on a raw copy here, so this is definitely down. So we don't completely have apples to apples comparisons here. We're going to go with I'll Be Back rather than Trap, but definitely have backed up here on this Power Girl book. So closer to where the long-term averages are a little bit on this one from those jumps in the spring, even though her series is coming out now. All right, next we have Gen 13, number 1 from 1994. Here's a little 90s love. Basically, there's some rumors here that maybe these characters might be coming back into the comics. There was also some stuff with James Gunn, I think. It's a little confusing exactly what was going on here, why this was causing this book to jump. But 9.8s, we're going for 120 to 140, which was definitely up. Definitely a spike in sales going on here. Now, a raw copy will cost you $5 to $25. 9.8, $70 to $135. So a down and I'll be back for this series from the quintessential 90s. At least to me, I remember a lot of this series and those sexy Fairchild covers, first by Jim Lee here, and then later by J. Scott Campbell. So, all right, next we got a little DC stuff for sure, or DC rumor stuff for sure. The Terrifics, number 1, hit the list. It's the first team appearance of the Terrifics because James Gunn tweeted about the Terrifics, so everybody jumped on it because, hey, we're going to get Terrifics as part of this new DC movie verse. Back then, raw copies were going for 15 to 20 plus. Now it's a $5 to $20 book, so we're going to call this a down and I'll be back. I don't know how much legs we're going to get here. I could see us getting some of these characters. I don't know that we'll get this team, but James Gunn, so who knows what oddballs that he's going to pull. These do seem like characters that maybe he would be more inclined to grab and use. All right, next we got Comic Scene number 31. This has a Harley Quinn preview in it prior to Batman Adventures 12. So this was a preview of her showing up in the cartoon. Really, it was. I think this was more about the cartoon than the comic series preview. But this hit the list because we got Lady Gaga set photos from Joker 2. Back then, raw copies were averaging 100. 9.8 went for $2,000. No recent 9.8 sales, so closest we could come was a 9.4 for 116, but that's way below a 9.8 at 2,000. But the raw copies tell the tale here, 35 to 75, even for our high quality stuff. So down in a trap, definitely on this particular book. All right. 4 books left, a little Sony, a little MCU, a little Star Wars still to talk about. First, we have Spider-Man number 1, the first meeting of Peter and Miles. So we knew we were getting Across the Spider-Verse was getting ready to come out. Plus, there's been continued rumors that we're going to get Miles in live action. Still no confirmation of that, but that was causing this book to hit the list again. It's been on the list a couple different times over the years. Back then, raw copies were going for 30, 9.8 going for 80. Now, raw copy will cost you 5 to 25, 9.8, 70 to 115. So those 9.8s are pretty steady. Maybe even, you could argue, maybe even like worth it. Not quite up, maybe, but steady, worth it kind of thing. But the raw copies are the majority of the sales, and they are definitely down, and I'll be back on this particular book. This first meeting keeps getting legs every so often. My guess is it will jump again at some point, but right now it's a little bit cheaper than it has been. All right, next we have Meet the Skrulls, number 1, the first appearance of Gaia. This is when we got, I think at this point it was still rumors that Emilia Clarke was going to play Gaia in Secret Invasion. That is what we got. This is the character that she plays. Back then, our copies were going for 15 to 20. Now it's a $10 to $20 book, with the show not being that far in the past, so we're pretty steady here. A little bit on that, I'll be back on that raw side. 9.8 here are going to cost you 80 to 120, which is, we didn't have reported values back then, but I think pretty similar to where they've been for a while now. So we did get Gaia. We'll see if we get any more of that. I don't know where they're going to go with her and the character, and especially given how that season ended. I would think they would try to use her again. She's kind of pretty powerful now, so we'll see what happens with her. All right, next we have Avengers number 52, the first appearance of Grim Reaper. And this was hitting the list because rumors of casting for the Wonder Man show. Basically, Wonder Man, Grim Reaper, if you don't know, is Wonder Man's brother. So that was what was going on here, that we might get this character. Raw copies were going for $20 to $180 back then, 9.6 at $1,200. Now it's a 10 to 110 book on the raw side. 9.4 is the closest, again, high grade I could find, $550. So we're going to still call this a down, and I'll be back overall here. Book is backed up a little bit. Grim Reaper's been speculated on several times. Yeah, I would just look for a deal if you're looking for this book. And definitely not around any kind of news. All right, last but not least this week, we have Star Wars, Kanan the Last Padawan, number 6. The first full appearance of Sabine, Ezra, Hera, Chopper, all of which have been appearing right now in the Ahsoka show. Raw copies back then were 75 to 125, 9.8 going for $450 in the run up to this. And now we're in the show, and it's a $40 to $125 book on the raw side. So pretty close to steady there on the raw side. 9.8 though, 275 to 350. That's a down, and I'll be back on the 9.8 side. The book has continued to back up. The 450 was actually down from some of the original peaks when we first thought we were going to get these characters. I think this book got to be a almost $700 book at one point. Continues to drop. And my guess is once this show passes, it's going to drop some more on this particular book. So, yeah, I would be patient on this, even though I know we're supposed to get a season 2 of Ahsoka, and we're supposed to get Dave Filoni's movie that's supposed to kind of wrap this up. Yeah, it's going to be a little while before we get there, for sure. All right, so that is this week's list. I want to thank you guys for watching. Much better than last week, where we had like all those dumpster fires. We didn't really have a dumpster fire this week, but still most of the books were down. Thank you guys for watching, and we will catch you next time.